Pure Ambition family, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. If you are watching on YouTube and this is your first time checking the show out, please like this video, subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss any more of these episodes. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please, if you could take a second to leave a 5-star rating and review, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, diving into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, we are talking whether or not you should be tracking macros and calories. This is, I would say, one of the most debated things in the health and wellness space that I have been in, at least over the past few years. I have personally tracked my macros and my calories, and I've also done intuitive eating, which is just, eating based off of feel, knowing not exactly, but knowing what your body needs at specific points in time based on your specific goals or things like that. So, the first thing to understand is what even is a calorie, right? And a calorie is a unit of energy. So, when you're consuming calories, you're really taking in energy. So, if you hear, oh, I'm at a calorie surplus, that means you're taking in more energy than you're expending in order to add lean body mass, add weight, add whatever it is, or if you're in a caloric deficit, you're taking in less energy than you're expending in order to lose body fat, right? And so macronutrients are defined as the nutritive components of food that the body needs for energy and to maintain the body's structure and systems and overall just function properly, right? And the macronutrients are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, fats, those are going to be the energy, whereas protein is the building blocks for the muscles and helps boost the immune system and helps with longevity and does all sort of amazing things. Helps with satiety, keeping our hunger hormones lower, so keeping us more filled up. And so those are the difference between the macronutrients. We have protein, building blocks, and then we have carbs and fats, which are the units of energy, right? But all of them contain calories. And proteins and carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram, whereas fat contains 9 calories per gram. So calories there, fat is more calorie dense than proteins and carbohydrates. But what's important to note, and what not enough people are talking about, are the micronutrients. And my good buddy Dan Churchill, who is an Australian performance chef out in New York City, I had him on the podcast last year, and he told me, Dom, if you are not thinking about the micronutrients, if you're only looking at the macros, right, and you're not worried about the micronutrients that you're putting into your body, then the macros aren't going to matter because you're not giving your body what it needs from a micronutrient standpoint. And so micronutrients are defined as vitamins and minerals needed by the body in very small amounts, but have a critical impact on our health. So think about animal products or plant foods, right? To give some examples, B vitamins are something that humans are, we tend to be very deficient in, and they can only be found in animal products. So, for example, having steak or grass-fed, grass-finished beef or pasture-raised eggs or chicken or milk, dairy, cheese, all those kind of things, those are going to be loaded with vitamins and minerals like zinc, creatine, iron, vitamin D, vitamin B, B6, B12, a whole bunch of other things that are going to help our body function properly. And so when we take in high quality food products, we get the macronutrients. So like obviously if you have a nice grass-fed, grass-finished steak, you're going to get, the fatty meat there. So you're going to get fats, you're going to get protein, but you're also going to get all those great vitamins and minerals that are loaded in that steak. Whereas from vitamins or from plants, so fruits and vegetables, you're going to get a lot more micronutrients than you are macronutrients, like having an arugula salad with peppers and onions and celery and cucumbers and beets and whatever good stuff you want to throw in there. It's not going to be super calorie dense. So from, a macronutrient standpoint, proteins, fats, carbs, you're really not getting much of anything at all, but you're getting an insane amount of micronutrients. Personally, I've done a lower carb diet, very high in fat, very high in protein, very low in, fruits and vegetables. And personally, I didn't feel great. I know that kind of diet works for a lot of people, but after a while, I just I wasn't able to I wasn't able to keep a good lean body composition. I was tired, my workouts weren't as great, so I was lacking in those micronutrients. And even though you do get a ton of micronutrients from, again, those animal products, I think there is something to be said about the vitamins and minerals and the micronutrients that are delivered from those plant foods, right? And so there are certain ones I stay away from for the most part, like broccoli or cauliflower and some of the cruciferous vegetables that tend to be a little harder on my stomach. So I tend to stay away from those. But overall, getting the micronutrients from both plant foods and animal products are going to really, really enhance, our body's function and quality of life. And so when somebody says I'm tracking my macros, right, it means that they're tracking the proteins, the fats, and the carbohydrates that they're taking in. Very rarely, if ever, are you going to hear somebody say, I'm tracking my micros. I'm tracking my micronutrients. And that's fair because it's very hard. But what you should be doing if you're tracking macros still is making sure that you're getting a ton of micronutrients, right? And so again, these higher quality products like organic, grass fed, grass finish, pasture raised, all of these things are going to be higher in nutrients than standard conditional factory farmed, non-organic, pesticide ridden foods. So if you're thinking about counting your macros, you should it's quality is just as important as quantity. And I know there's these like flexible dieting people out there who basically what flexible dieting is if it fits your macros. So basically meaning you can eat whatever you want as long as your proteins, your fats, and carbs are in alignment with what you're trying to do for your goals. And at the end of the day, it is calories in, calories out. So if you are trying to put on lean muscle mass, you're trying to bulk up, or you're trying to lean out, you can't, you're never going to put on weight. You're never going to put on muscle if you're eating less than you're burning. So a lot of people want to say calories in, calories out is a myth. I tend to disagree because personally, when I've tried to put on weight and I wasn't eating enough, it's not possible, right? And if you're trying to lose body fat, if you're trying to cut down, lean out, you're not going to lean out unless you're eating less than you're burning. Now, there are exceptions to this. I've had clients when I was doing nutrition coaching and personal training where they were overweight, eating 1,700 calories a day. I bumped their calories up to over 3,000 calories a day, where their body, where it should have been to bring their body back to homeostasis, to bring their biofeedback markers back to balance. So biofeedback markers meaning sleeping well, recovering better, better mood, better libido, a couple other metrics there, but those are the main things that you want to look at. And so I had a client who was eating 1,600 calories, like crash dieting. His body was just in constant fight or flight mode. And when your body's in that stressful state, it's not able to relax and make the adaptations that it's required to either, put on weight or lose body fat, whatever it is. So he was eating almost twice the amount of calories that he was before we started working together. And then he was actually losing weight. He was losing body fat by eating more. And that's because his body was finally able and that's because his body was finally able to relax and get out of that fight or flight state. So macronutrients and micronutrients are extremely important. You don't want to focus on one without focusing on the other. And I feel like I need to share the pros of tracking calories and tracking macros, and then also the potential downsides of them, because I have been on both sides of the fence. I've both tracked my calories and macros, and I've also done intuitive eating. Ultimately, I think there's a place for both of them. And the pros of tracking calories and macros are, one, it gives you an idea of what you're actually eating. So, again, back to my nutrition coaching days, I would have my clients track their food for a week in an app like MyFitnessPal, which you can download for free. And you can input the foods that you're eating, and it's going to tell you how many grams of protein, how many grams of fat, how many grams of carbs you're eating each day. But it's also going to give you like how much fiber is in there, how much sugar is in there, saturated fats and potassium, magnesium, like all those things. It's great. So the pros for it are, okay, I can actually see what I'm eating. So I had clients who were like, I'm not even kidding you. We're eating like 30 to 40 grams of protein a day. That was it. And they would be like, oh my gosh, I thought I was eating way more than this, or I thought I was eating way less calories than this. And when they actually are able to plug in and see what they've been doing, it's like, oh, whoa, okay, we need to make a change. But that's a good place to start, right? Because, you know, we can shoot from the hip and think that we're, getting enough protein in, getting enough calories in, getting an adequate amount of fats and carbohydrates and having a good balance there for whatever your current goal is. But at the end of the day, what gets measured gets managed, right? You're not just going to intuitively, handle your finances, right? Like you're going to track what's going in and out. You're going to be very meticulous about those things. I think it's very important to have the same thing for nutrition, right? Your calories, your macros, it's a great tool to learn about food, right? So you can input like, okay, 4 ounces of ground beef, 90-10. It's going to be like 200 calories, like 22 grams of protein, like 11 grams of fat. So you're able to learn that, right? And then you can eventually eyeball what 4 ounces of ground beef looks like, or what a cup of rice looks like, or, that one banana has, 28 grams of carbs or however much it is. So using a food scale, actually tracking how much is going in and out, just at first, like not changing anything. That first week when you're tracking, don't change anything, because you want to get a good, accurate baseline of where you're currently at. And then once you do that, you're then able to, I would recommend going to a BMR calculator. You can just look up BMR calculator online, and your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. And that's how many calories your body needs just to function if it was just to sit in bed all day, right? And so for me, I'm about 6 foot, 195 pounds. I need about 2,000 calories just if I was laying in bed all day for my body to function properly. Now, I need much more than that. And it's very difficult for me to get in the calories that I need training a good amount, 1 to 2 hours per day. So I'm actually trying to put on a little bit of lean body mass, lean muscle mass. So I need to be eating like 3,000 to 3,400 calories some days, even more. And I'm at a point right now where on those bigger training days, I am tracking my calories. So not every day, but I would say probably like 3 to 4 times a week, I'm tracking my calories just as a way to make sure I'm getting in enough, because otherwise I tend to undereat. And I'm also trying to eat more carbohydrates right now, lower my fats down, which is going to help with my testosterone levels and my hormone panel, which wasn't the best a couple of months ago. I am going to be getting that redone here in about 2 months. So I'm excited to see the progress there. But I'm eating more carbohydrates, and I'm eating like 350 grams a day, which is a lot. And if I'm not like tracking that, it's very, very difficult to get that because it's a lot. It's a lot of food. It's a lot of carbohydrates. So once you get your BMR, you can put in your height, your weight, your age, and your activity level, and it's going to give out a number, rough estimate of where you should be from a calorie standpoint. And once you get your baseline calories, the first thing you want to do is a good place to start is, zero point 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And then once you get your protein, your number in protein, then you can go off of your carbs and your fats, and you can raise them or lower them based off of what you feel best with. So if you feel better eating higher carb, raise them up. If you feel better eating more fat, you can lower them down. After you have your protein number, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, 4 calories per gram for protein. So say it's 200 grams of protein, multiply by 4, 800 of your, say, 2,500 calories are going to come from protein. And after you have that, you're going to set your fats. So for me right now, my fats are at about 30% of my daily calorie intake, whereas females might need to be a little bit higher, 35, 40. And again, it just depends on what your goal is. So if you're trying to lean out, for example, your fats are actually going to want to be a little bit higher and probably bring your carbs down a little bit lower. That's what's been successful for me. But always just making sure that you're eating less than you're burning if you're trying to be in a caloric deficit and lose body fat, right? And so for me, or for example, if you set your calories at, or your fats at 30% of your total daily calorie intake, you're going to take that number, 30% or 2,500, and then multiply that by 0.3, which is going to be 30%. That's going to give you a number for calories for fats. Add that up with the number of calories for protein, which was 800, and then you fill in the rest with carbohydrates. So that's how you're going to calculate your macros. And if you need any help with that, any resources like that, just Google or YouTube, how to set my macros based on your calorie intake. There's tons and tons of great resources out there that have helped me a ton. So those are the pros, right? You're able to ultimately learn how many calories and what macros your body currently needs, and then also what you're currently doing. Like, what changes do you need to make? Just developing that awareness before going and making the changes and implementing those based on your goal. So I think there's different times that are good to track your macros. Again, like if you're trying to achieve a certain body composition, right? That's why bodybuilders are huge, like track everything that goes into their bodies. So if you're looking to, again, put on lean muscle mass, if you're looking to lean out a little bit, or if you're trying to get your body back to homeostasis, like if you have an eating disorder and you're chronically under eating and you're trying to put on that muscle, you're trying to put on a little bit of weight, it's a great tool to make sure that you're actually eating enough, right? And so that's when I think it could be good. As well as for me, it was when I was tracking probably the most religiously was when I was going back to school to play football, and I needed to make sure I was eating 32 to 3,500 calories a day because of how much I was training, while making sure I wasn't losing any weight or losing any muscle. So I was tracking pretty meticulously. And if you're trying to, say, go to the CrossFit Games, or you're about to go run a marathon or pursue some other fitness goal, it's a great way to make sure that you're not under fueling, making sure that you're fueled up, you're able to recover properly, and you're able to perform your best. So those are the times where I think it's going to be really beneficial for you to track your calories and macros. And I personally think that, if you've never done it, everyone should do it just for like a short period of time. The main thing is just being protein, like, because so many people are not getting enough protein. And if you're getting that adequate amount of protein, again, like 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per pound of body weight minimum. That's should be the goal, right? And so many people are not getting that. And again, I would struggle with that if I when I don't track, because you say, "Oh, I'm gonna eyeball this, I'm gonna eyeball that," and eventually you can get to that point, but it's still hard to keep track of, right? So a lot of these apps make it really easy. You can just scan barcodes and it'll input everything for you. The potential downsides of counting calories and macros, which I have been there before too, is you're constantly thinking about the number, right? And it makes it really difficult if you're going out to eat with friends or family members, or you're going to a gathering at somebody's house, or whatever else it may be. If you're traveling and you don't have a food scale, it makes it very difficult for you to track your calories and macros. Don't sweat it, right? Like, we're all human, and these things happen. Like, if you're doing it, you know, 90% of the time, awesome. Like, if you want to go out and, you know, get some food with your friends or whatever, like, learning to eat intuitively is all part of this process, right? Because if you constantly are relying on having to track macros all the time, you're never going to be able to enjoy life. Like, I've been to the point where I was so worried about my calories and my macros that, like, I would be going out to eat and I would be stressing all day because I was like, okay, well, I got to eat more. I got to eat less fats now because I'm going to be having this for dinner. Or I got to make sure I have enough protein in, like, all these things, just stressing out big time for no reason, because at the end of the day it's just a number, and you're going to get back on track, whether whenever the next day, or when you get back from your trip, whatever else it may be. All of this is just making it easier for you to eat intuitively and live your life in a healthy way, right? Like, living a healthy lifestyle is the most important thing, and using as little tracking devices and things like that as we possibly can, because they're all great tools, but they shouldn't be something that we're relying on every single day, right? Like, these are teaching you, like, okay, I am going out to dinner tonight. I probably am going to eat more carbs or whatever. So I'm going to eat less throughout the day to save room for the drinks and the desserts that I might have later in the day. Or, I'm going to eat more fats and protein, and I'm going to save my carbs for later in the day, or vice versa, and things like that. So learning to eat intuitively should be your ultimate goal. And don't get bogged down and let it take up too much of your mental capacity about your calories and macros, because again, unless you're like pursuing a bodybuilding show or something like that, life is going to go on and you're going to get right back on track the next day. So don't worry about it too much, right? People tend to overthink it big time, myself included. I've been there. And so I think there's a question to ask yourself before you're about to start tracking macros and calories. And that is, what is your specific goal from a health and wellness standpoint? Are you trying to put on lean muscle mass? Are you trying to lose body fat? Are you trying to bring your body back to balance, bring your body back to homeostasis, bring your hormones back to functioning properly? Are you trying to PR in a marathon? Are you trying to train for a powerlifting competition? Are you just trying to live a healthier lifestyle? Like, I think they're establishing a goal for yourself and knowing where your direction is that you're trying to go. That is a good predicator of like when you should be tracking, if you should be tracking. For me right now, I know that I'm trying to perform and recover to the best of my ability, and also help with my optimize my hormone production. So I intuitively eat a few days a week, and then on days where I'm training more, like on days where I'm training twice a day, which isn't very often anymore, it's usually 2, 3 times a week, I am tracking on those days just to make sure I'm getting enough calories in, I'm getting enough protein in, I'm getting the nutrients in that I need to, but putting a hyper focus on the micronutrients and making sure I'm delivering the vitamins and the minerals that my body needs to function properly. And if you decide you are going to track, again, using the BMR calculator and setting your baseline calories. And again, it's all up for, there's wiggle room there. Like you might have to raise your calories if you're still not feeling great, if you're still not putting on, about a half pound to a pound per week. If you're trying to put on weight and, losing zero point 0.5 of a pound to 1 pound. If you're trying to lose body fat, that's a good sustainable way to do it versus just crash dieting. So using the revised Harris-Benedict equation on a BMR calculator is going to be very, very helpful for you there. But ultimately, you should be thinking about, okay, what is my current health and wellness goal? And is tracking calories and macros going to be one of the tools that I should use to do that, right? And so for months and months and months, I didn't have a health and wellness goal. I was just living my life trying to eat as healthy as possible. I wasn't tracking. I was living intuitively. I was eating intuitively, but it took, a long time to get to that point where I felt comfortable doing that. I've tracked my calories. I've tracked my macros before. I've also gotten addicted to that, and it's been difficult to break free from it. And just because that is like a possibility doesn't mean you should stray away from it. But if you feel yourself becoming so reliant on it and it's taking away from your quality of life, that's a sign that maybe you should stop. Maybe you should focus on intuitive eating, because at the end of the day, our purpose in life is not to focus on a number of how much energy we're taking in each day. Our lives are meant to be lived, and food is energy, but it's also information that our body and our minds take in order to help us live the highest quality life possible in the time that we have here. So tracking calories and macros can be extremely beneficial, but it can also be detrimental to our quality of life, our relationships, our presence in our day-to-day interactions. So that's something to be aware of as well. So, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a forever thing. The ultimate goal is to get to a place where you're comfortable intuitive eating, and you can use tracking your calories, tracking your macros as a tool to help you achieve your health and wellness goals. It's a great tool to learn, and it's a way that you can get a leg up, an advantage from a performance standpoint as well. I really, really hope this was helpful. Again, I've been in, whether or not you've tracked macros before, it can be a little bit difficult getting started and knowing when should I stop doing it. My advice is like, figure out what your goal is, set a date for that specific goal if you're going to continue, and then track calories and macros throughout that. And then once you're done, you go into your little off season and just get back to intuitive eating and just enjoying your life. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my goal and mission with these podcasts, with these videos, is to just try to provide as much value to you guys as possible to help you live your best lives and just ultimately be the best version of yourself. And nutrition is a way to do that. It should be part of our lives, but it shouldn't be our whole lives. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any one of those other listening platforms, please leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps the show grow so that we can reach and impact more people. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.